by the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable. My name is Kim Richards, and I am the Administrative Director with the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable. Today's webinar is entitled TRI's Pollution Prevention Search Tool, New Metrics for Assessing Progress and Sustainability. EPA's Toxic Release and Inventory Program collects a wealth of standardized multimedia environmental information from over 20,000 industrial facilities each year. The TRI's unique combination of quantitative and qualitative information makes it a valuable resource for tracking environmental progress and identifying sustainable practices that have led to measurable improvements. Over the past 2 years, EPA has taken steps to enhance the information reported to TRI under the Pollution Prevention Act and to make these data more accessible, meaningful, and intelligible. Today's webinar will show the new version of the tool that can help you identify candidates for recognition, technical assistance, or community focus. The webinar will also show you how to find P2 details for individual facilities and how to find opportunities for technology transfer using the P2 information reported to TRI. Our presenter today is Daniel with the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Daniel Teitelbaum is the Pollution Prevention Staff Lead for the Toxic Release Inventory Program in EPA's Office of Environmental Information. In this role, he promotes the collection, dissemination, and use of information about environmental performance and effective P2 practices. Daniel joined the EPA as a Presidential Management Fellow in 2009 and has also worked in the Sustainability Program for EPA Region 2. He holds an MPA in Environmental Science and Policy from Columbia University and the BA in Economics from Brown University. And I just want to go over a few logistics before Daniel begins his presentation. Today's webinar will be recorded, and the slides and recording will be available next week on our website at p2.org. We will have time for questions at the end of the webinar. Webinar attendees will be on mute throughout the webinar, so please type your questions in the questions section on your GoToWebinar panel at any point during the webinar. And now I'll hand things over to Daniel.
Thanks, Kim. So I'm Daniel Teitelbaum. I'm the Pollution Prevention Staff Lead for the TRI program. And like Kim said in that very helpful introduction, I've been working over the past few years to improve the utility of TRI as a pollution prevention resource for all of you. So I'll be covering basically 3 things in this webinar. First, a very brief overview of TRI and our pollution prevention information, just to make sure everyone's got the basics down. Second, I'll talk about some of the high-level pollution prevention trends and information that we've been seeing and that we recently highlighted in our annual National Analysis Report. And then 3, I'll show you how you can do your own analyses that will involve demos of the latest version of our pollution prevention tool. And after I've gone over those 3 things, I'd love to hear your questions and suggestions. And you know, as I go along, think about if there's something you'd like to see, how would I find this type of information. You know, type that in, and I can demo that later on as well. So I'll just get started with the brief intro to TRI. If you're not sure what TRI is, then the rest of the presentation won't make too much sense. So I'll just cover the basics in a couple minutes. Basically, TRI is the EPA program where facilities report data to us. This is a regulatory program, and covered facilities submit information on releases and management of listed toxic chemicals at their facilities. So that includes information on releases and transfers of toxic chemicals, but also information on what facilities are doing to avoid the release of the toxic chemicals through things like recycling or pollution prevention. So who reports to TRI? This is a key question, because if you're wondering, you know, why is there not information on such and such, then it has to do with you know, our requirements for who actually reports. So there's about a little over 20,000 facilities that report to TRI each year, and they do so because they meet 3 statutory criteria. So 1, you have to be in a covered industry. That includes the manufacturing sectors, as well as some electric generation, certain mining facilities, hazardous waste, and federal facilities. If you're not in one of those industries, it doesn't matter how much toxic chemicals you're managing, releasing, you're not going to have to report. So that's the first criterion. Second you have to have the equivalent of at least 10 full-time employees. And 3, your facility must manufacture, process, or otherwise use a listed TRI toxic chemical above certain thresholds. So that if you've met these criteria, you fill out a TRI report for each individual listed toxic chemical for which you've exceeded one of the thresholds. So the report that your facility submits is going to have a wide range of information. I'm going to be focusing on the pollution prevention information that facilities submit. So the information we collect under the Pollution Prevention Act of 1990 is organized around the waste management hierarchy from that statute. So that tells you if you're going to have toxic chemicals at your facility, here's the most preferred ways of dealing with it. The best thing is to eliminate pollution at its source through source reduction, but at the very least, it's best to recycle or treat waste rather than releasing it directly to the environment would be the least preferred. So around that framework, we collect 3 types of information. We collect information on any new source reduction activities that facilities have implemented. That's a yes/no question. If a facility did implement source reduction, then they're required to tell us what types of activities they implemented. That's done using codes. We'll see some of the categories of this later on. Then there's one optional field where facilities provide free text details about their P2 activities or about other environmentally friendly practices. So that's the one optional piece of this. I'll have examples of that in a bit also. And then another required section is a full accounting of your waste management quantities. So that'll have the total production-related waste managed at each facility broken down into the categories of more preferred like recycling or less preferred like disposal and other releases. So as I mentioned just a couple months ago in February, we published our 2012 TRI National Analysis Report. So that we kind of looked at the data that was submitted in 2013 by facilities about what they did in 2012. That's the way the annual cycle works. And so when we looked at that data, we see what are the kinds of the stories in here at the overall national level. And in terms of the P2 progress story, you can see the trends over the past decade of overall waste has generally come down. So that's these bars that represent total reported waste broken down within the hierarchy, of course. So you can see that the red releases and the overall amounts have trended down somewhat. There's a little bit of up and down where that's associated with economic trends. But in general, we've seen slight but significant improvements in these quantities over the past decade. The numbers would be even larger decreases if you went back further. But within the overall stories, there are actually a lot more significant examples of P2 progress when you can look at individual chemicals or sectors. And that's important because many of you or us at EPA also, we're not working on everything all at once. You'll be working in a particular situation, and in several circumstances, we've seen that dramatic P2 progress seems to be possible. So in this past year's national analysis, we looked at what are the sectors that have had the biggest reductions in TRI releases. We know, overall, maybe things have gone down 20% in recent years. But over that last decade, we've seen some sectors going down as much as 60 to 70%. So these 5 had the biggest reductions. So those blue bars represent percent decreases in releases, very significant, showing that if a facility is in this sector, then progress is certainly possible. The yellow bars represent the decrease in overall production-related waste managed. So you see something like wood products releases have come down 70%, whereas overall waste has only come down 10%. That might mean that they're doing things like pollution control. They're shifting away from releases and towards things like treatment, whereas something like furniture, both the waste managed and the releases numbers have come down substantially. So that's indicative that that either there's been offshoring, economic reasons, or and this is what we have found to be the case when we've done our economic analyses, that really it looks like source reduction has played a role. So what information do we have in terms of source reduction? We know in certain areas the numbers are coming down. That's good from an environmental perspective. Why is that happening? So last year, 15% of facilities actually reported implementing new source reduction practices. So this slide is kind of giving you the overall picture of what's happening in terms of source reduction, but also I just want to familiarize everyone with the type of source reduction information we have. So when facilities report their activities, they report it in one of 8 categories, the most common one being good operating practices, but other things like process modifications, spill and leak prevention, et cetera. Those are the overall categories. If you drill down, they go even further. There's actually a total of almost 50 codes used to report source reduction activities. But we see 15% of facilities reported activities, or I think around 10,000 individual source reduction practices reported last year. So that shows that there are steps being taken and progress is being made. There are things that we can learn from. So trying to connect the quantitative and the qualitative, again, these are all figures from our recent national analysis report. Looking again at the sectors that had the biggest percent decreases, you see in the green outlined area, we have the percent decreases from left to right, furniture through textiles. Those are the 5 sectors with the biggest decreases. Now let's look at the breakdown of what source reduction activities were reported for these sectors. So in each case, we see there have been thousands or 1,000+ activities reported, but there's different types for different sectors. So furniture, a lot of the improvements have been in the cleaning and degreasing area. Computers and electronics, there's a lot more in raw material and process modifications, product modifications that had a lot to do with switching to lead-free solder. So this is kind of an aggregate, high-level picture. In any of these cases, you'd be able to drill down into the actual activities reported for the sector, and that might give you an idea of, if you're a facility in the sector, if you're working with a facility in this sector, what are some of the practices that have led to what we've seen are significant decreases. Also, we looked at kind of two of the biggest ways of breaking down TRI data are sector-wise and chemicals. So we also looked at, for the 5 chemicals shown here, we've also had 60+% decreases in releases over the last decade. Hydrochloric acid, 80%. So we know these are areas where progress is possible, and we see that though different types of practices have applied to different chemicals. Trichloroethylene, cleaning and degreasing contributed, whereas dichloromethane has been a lot more process modification. So this just gives ideas of what types of practices are out there to reduce releases of certain chemicals. So far I've talked through the quantitative release and waste management data, as well as the qualitative but required information on source reduction activities. The last piece that really helps to complete the puzzle in terms of TRI's pollution prevention information is the optional P2 info. So just up here I've put up 3 of the examples from the last year that we highlighted on our website. And so you see within each of the source reduction categories, raw material modification, spill and leak prevention, surface preparation and finishing, those are helpful when you're looking at high-level statistics, but in each of these cases, we have many detailed examples of what facilities say they've done. So for the first one, raw material modification doesn't tell you too much, but knowing that a facility in your industry has largely eliminated the use of high xylene content material by making two key technology changes, talking about those technology changes, that's a lot more informative in terms of what types of P2 practices are might be available. What could a facility B do that has already worked at facility A? So we'll be seeing some more of these examples throughout. I just put these up here to give a complete picture of the data that we have available. And finally, an important question is how much of this information do we get, especially the optional information. Facilities are already taking the time to provide a very detailed accounting of chemicals, providing a lot of required information. Are they really going to take the time to provide the optional? So over the past 2 years, since we started as an agency putting some emphasis on pollution prevention reporting and taking the information facilities give us and use it to tell a positive story to highlight the P2 successes that are going on, we've seen a lot more facilities pay attention to this section. So the blue bars, the forms with P2 activity codes, those are the ones that report source reduction activities. That's gone up somewhat. So there's 10% of cases facilities have told us, yes, we did source reduction, as opposed to it only been 7% 2 years ago. But the real dramatic difference is that now 10% have those types of details. They're not all as detailed as what you saw on the previous slide. Sometimes they'll give a very short one-sentence description, sometimes a couple paragraphs. But that is a real wealth of information, 7,000 individual submissions last year of facilities highlighting ways that they made environmental improvements. So that kind of wraps up the overview of the information and the high-level descriptions that we provide in our national analysis. I want to focus now on how you can access TRI's data yourselves and how you can use it in your own work. So this slide, when Kim posts this to the NPPR website, this slide will be hopefully a great resource. All of these icons are clickable. They'll take you to each of the tools. TRI has a lot of tools out there, a lot of information sources. That's because it's a very rich and complex data set, and there's a lot of different ways to go about accessing and analyzing it. But basically, if you're looking for P2 information, these are the places to go, and this is how you know where to go for each one. So the national analysis, if you want to learn more about what I just talked about, you can go there and read our report. You can also download P2 stats and full list of activities in Excel. If there's time, I'll show that, but that's an alternative to going to the tools. If you're just comfortable with spreadsheets, you can get a full accounting of what P2 information was reported to TRI in 2012. These other tools, P2 search tool, TRI search, I'll talk about momentarily. TRI.net I'm not going to get into here, but if you're a really sophisticated user of TRI data, this is a way that you can mix and match kind of any TRI data elements of your choosing. So if there's something that I haven't shown you how to do, then that might be a way to do it. MyRTK is our simplest introductory tool. Works on mobile devices, helps you find P2 information for TRI facilities in your neighborhood. I'll be starting with that one in a moment. But first, I'm going to talk about what you'll actually see when you go into these tools. The key thing, especially for the P2 tool, that it can tell you is it can help you take what sort of static data set and transform it into more normative information that can tell you which facilities are doing better and worse in different ways. So what are those different ways? How much chemical waste is being generated? Obviously, a facility that's generating more waste versus less. Less is better. We want to know what are they doing in order to achieve less. Other metrics of waste that's being generated, how much is being released to the environment versus how much is being managed with preferred methods. Were source reduction activities implemented? Yes, no. Obviously, all things being equal, yes is better. And are chemical quantities going up or down over time? You know, maybe releases are still high, but if they're going down, at least there's that's showing that a facility has progress. And if you see that the facility's quantities are going down, then that's someone you might want to hold up as a model and look at for others to emulate. How much of chemical quantities change per unit of output? That's another thing that TRI can tell you. If quantities are going up, but production is rising at a faster rate, then that doesn't mean that the facility is doing anything wrong. It's just another way of looking at the data. And finally, how much greenhouse gas pollution is being emitted. That's not something that's reported to TRI, but many TRI facilities also report to EPA's greenhouse gas reporting program. So if you're looking for a more holistic picture of who's doing better, who's doing worse, that's another important metric that you might want to bring in. So what the TRI P2 tool does is it helps you visualize all of these different metrics to see which facilities are doing better in which of these ways. So starting from some of the simplest things it can do to the most complex, one is just at a facility level, the tool will help you visualize a summary of all the P2 information that a facility has reported. It can then give you details for a single chemical at that facility. When facilities report pollution prevention descriptions, they're doing that for individual chemicals, so it's important to be able to view the information at the level of an individual chemical. 3, moving out from an individual facility, you can compare P2 progress across facilities in the same industry using some of those metrics I mentioned on the last slide. 4, you can get full lists of P2 activities applicable to a particular industry or chemical. We've seen that there's 8,000 of those activities and descriptions coming in each year, so listing out that information can tell you a lot. And finally, the tool can help you overlay TRI data with greenhouse gas emissions to provide a more holistic P2 picture. So here I'm going to jump to the demo of the P2 tool and some of the other tools that complement it. I'm going to start with the most simplistic, go from sort of least to most complex. So our simplest tool is the MyRTK application. So this is a way to just get information on what's being released in my neighborhood. I'm going to we're in the process of updating this on our server. So what I'm showing you now is in our staging server, but will be live shortly. So if I wanted to just see facilities in my neighborhood, I put that in here. It gives me a simple map showing me all of the nearby facilities. I can then go in and select a facility. So I didn't have to know, any prior knowledge of what I was really looking for. I just put in my city or zip code, and here's the TRI information. It gives just an overall framework of air, water, land, what's being released, how does it compare to others, and what you can now get in this tool is a pollution prevention and waste management breakdown. So here we've identified a nearby facility, and we can see within the hierarchy how much overall is being managed and in what ways is it being managed. So this facility, first we've seen what's being released. There's some amount of chemical being released to air. We can see most of the waste that they're generating, they're treating for destruction. A small amount is being released. And this one did not report new source reduction activities last year. But from a P2 perspective, from here, this can take you to the full P2 report for a facility. You can also get to this through the P2 tool itself, but I'm going to just pull it up from here. So this is that same facility, Bradford Industries, but now we're getting the summary of the P2 information that we have for it. So first, here's summary information on the facility. What company is it? What industry? It's a fabric coating mill. And then we're going to look at not just what happened in the most recent year, which is what MyRTK does, but what's been the trends over time. So since 2007, their overall waste has been coming down. The releases has been coming down. You see there was more red in earlier years. Now there's more yellow. So that tells you the high-level trends. You can see also the breakdown for each of the three chemicals that they are reporting. So it's toluene and this other one that I'm having trouble reading. Those are mostly being treated. Antimony is being released, but we saw that that's not the main one that they are releasing. And we can also see the trends for each one. So antimony is the one they're not releasing. Much of it is going up. The others have been relatively flat. And lastly, to complete the high-level summary of P2 information for this facility, we see in each year have they reported P2 activities. So for certain chemicals, they have been reporting P2. 2012, they reported barriers as to why they were not able to do more P2. And by clicking on an individual chemical, we can see that same the information about those P2 activities or those barriers to P2. We can see that in a little bit more detail. So now we've selected toluene at this facility. We could switch to a different chemical if we wanted, but now we're seeing the same chart just for this one chemical, and we see that this chemical has actually gone down significantly. We can see that it's being managed in a more preferable way than some others in the industry. This waste management comparison on the right tells you this one has only a small slice is being released. Others in the same industry are releasing more. So now we're getting a more detailed, a more relevant comparison because we're looking at a individual chemical. And then if we want to see, why did it come down? Why did toluene quantities come down? We can click on 2011, and we can see actually what they did. These are the source production codes that I introduced before. So they made a raw material substitution, but they also provided more details on it. They said that they've replaced it with PVC vinyl, DMF, and water-based formulations, and that's how they got this 57% reduction. So that's what all the information looks like when you put it together at the level of an individual chemical at an individual facility. But remember, the other thing that the tool can do is it can help you branch out and make comparisons or see activity lists across an industry. So we're going to go look at that here. So this facility seems to be doing pretty well with toluene. I just clicked on Find More P2 Activities for this chemical and industry. But if you were looking for solutions applicable to this chemical, or if you were looking at a facility that wasn't doing so well, then this information might be valuable. So this is another screen that the tool provides. This is a P2 activity listing, and it lists out facilities, and then it tells you in what year did they report pollution prevention information. So Warwick Mills in 2008, the releases went from 55,000 all the way down to 1,200. They had a 98% reduction, and they attributed that to the use of thermal oxidation process using fire tube boilers for heat recovery. You see there's other descriptions further down. Cooley, 60% reduction. as a result of water-based coatings. So remember, some of these descriptions are not going to actually be source reduction P2, because in the optional field you can talk about other environmentally friendly practices as well. But if your goal is just to reduce releases, then all of these things can be applicable. So the latest feature of the P2 tool is a P2 facility comparison report. So here I'm bringing that up by just clicking Display Facility Comparison Report for this industry and chemical. So for textiles and toluene, what I'm now going to get is a graph comparing all of the facilities in that industry. And remember, these are not just the facilities that reported P2 information, because everyone who reports to TRI has to provide a full accounting of their waste management quantities. So I'm going to use the slider bar at the top here to zoom in, but basically for these facilities, we have all of the metrics that I just talked about. We have who is managing the most versus the least, going from Highland over here to some of these ones that are, managing orders of magnitude less. We have who's managing their amounts through releases as opposed to through things like recycling. So Highland had the highest amount, but most of their amount is recycled, whereas some of these other facilities, it's mostly being released. A third metric is, did the facility implement P2? You can see that by the color coding. Green links indicate they did report P2. Orange means they reported barriers to P2. They still provided some response, some optional information. And blue means no P2. So that's 3 metrics to start with if we're looking for candidates for recognition or those who are looking for assistance. We can start with those metrics, but there are others here as well. Display waste quantities as a percentage of total waste. This is just another way of looking at the same information we saw before, of seeing who are the ones that aren't using preferred methods, that are mostly just releasing. And then the other thing to overlay would be the trend. Because ideally, if we want to highlight someone for recognition, it would be someone who's compares favorably currently to the rest of their industry and has also had reductions over time. So here's one that stands out. Jessup Manufacturing Company, on a normalized basis, so normalized per unit of production, their waste has come down 74% over the past 5 years. So this is just another metric that the tool lets you overlay on the other data, so you can get a holistic comparison. And if I wanted to from here, I want to see what is it that they did to have these sort of superior results. Then I just click on the link. It was highlighted green to tell me that there is P2 activities at this one. And remember, their waste was down from a normalized perspective, so I'm going to have to change this chart to normalized to see that. But we do see that, especially since 2008, they're doing better. And here's their list of activities. Purchase and installed a new regenerative thermal oxidizer, capture and incinerate a larger percentage of our VOM emissions, reduce our natural gas usage, and they also worked on transitioning to an ethyl acetate-based polymer, and use of alternative products. So there's a lot of things that they've reported doing that have contributed to positive results. So I'm going to just jump back to the PowerPoint for a moment. So everything I got to, I did through my right to know. So I showed how you could just start with a very basic question, what's going on in my neighborhood, and have our tools lead you through from one question to the next and providing answers along the way. But if I wanted to just start in the P2 tool, everything I showed are visualizations from the P2 tool, but here's actually the starting interface. So everything I just showed you could have just gotten to from here also. So this is a way to set your criteria and then either show P2 activities, show that activity listing, or display the graphical facility comparison report. So let's just run one more example. You could spell out something for all of these fields, but let's just say I'm interested in electric utilities. I'm not sure which chemical. I could use this field to pick a grouping or an individual chemical, but let's just say I'm not sure what I'm looking for. I just wanted to see what each of the different electric utilities are reporting to TRI. I could also narrow this down by state. If I wanted Massachusetts, I'd do that, but let's leave that alone here. And then I'll display a facility comparison report. So this is going to be the same chart that before I pulled up this chart by starting with an individual facility and comparing it to others in an industry. Now I'm just showing that if you're starting with the question of how are different electric utilities doing, then this is the way that you would approach that question. It's going to give you two charts. One of them is the trend graph for the industry, and the other one is going to be that bar chart. This one's going to take a little bit longer to load just because I looked at all chemicals for all electric utilities nationwide. But here we get that chart. We see now we're looking at all chemicals managed, so it's not the best, most meaningful comparison, but we see there's a lot of treatment at a lot of the chemicals, at a lot of the facilities with the highest amounts. And so we'll have the same options here. I'm going to show the one option I didn't show before, which is display greenhouse gas emissions reported to the GHG RP. And I'm doing this for electric utilities because in this case, all the same facilities that report to TRI also report to the greenhouse gas reporting program. So when you select this option, it gives you a little bit of information about that. It also gives you a place where you can click to see a greenhouse gas summary that the greenhouse gas reporting program provides. But now, again, we just have another metric of seeing who's doing better or worse in terms of P2. Overall, there seems to be a somewhat of a correlation. The ones with more TRI quantities also have more GHG emissions, and as you go down the line, the GHG emissions start to fall. But this is just one more metric. And lastly, I'll just show that, remember, I started off not knowing which chemical I wanted to do the comparison for, but obviously things are going to be more comparable if I'm looking at a single chemical. So the way I could do that is I just go to this drop-down. It's going to tell me the 10 most common chemicals in order reported by this sector. So now I can pick one, hydrochloric acid. We know from the chart I showed earlier that that's one that's been going down by a lot over the last decade. So if I select that, and then I can get the information at the level of an individual chemical. And as always, if I wanted to drill down, like, oh, look, this one has a greater share of releases. Let's see what's going on there. I can click on that. So this is just to demonstrate that there's only basically 3 or 4 report formats in the tool, but you can get to them a lot of different ways. It's designed to try to steer you towards the information that you're looking for. The last thing I'll show is that you can then overlay greenhouse gas emissions at the facility level as well. So we see this one, maybe it has more releases than the rest of its industry, but it's definitely improved, and its greenhouse gas emissions are coming down as well. So if there's time and interest, I can show more things with the P2 tool or other tools that could help you get TRI answers. These are just the same screens I just went through. But lastly, this is where we're at now with developing this tool. We're still interested in suggestions for what other information might be helpful. So a couple things we're thinking now is, instead of just providing the information at the level of facilities, we could provide the reports or the comparisons at the level of parent companies. And another thing we could do is we have information on treatment methods and efficiencies also, which are also reported using codes, same way that that source reduction activities are. That's another piece of information that might be helpful, knowing which treatment methods correspond with the best results. Here, this is just showing some of the types of treatment methods reported to us and which ones have a higher tend to have a higher efficiency rating. So that's something we don't provide that information right now in the same easily digestible, industry level way that we provide the P2 information, but that's something that we could do in the future as well. So the last thing that I'll highlight is our pollution prevention reporting tip sheet available on our website. So if you're a TRI facility, or you've worked with TRI reporting facilities that have implemented pollution prevention activities, then this is just a guide to helping with completing that optional free text field. It suggests topics that you might want to cover and examples of other facilities that have highlighted their achievements. So we encourage you to share this with any TRI facilities that you work with. So with that, used up about 3/4 of the hour, so I would like to take questions and suggestions and help to show you all how to find the information you're looking for. These are these are my contact info and the basic URLs where you could find the information I presented here, as well as on that reference sheet I showed earlier. Hope you will use that as well to pick your tools. So thank you all for your time, and I'll take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, for a fantastic and very informative presentation. So we do have time for questions, so please continue submitting any questions that you might have in that questions box on your panel. We'll go and get started. Daniel, I'll have you start. I know someone was interested in having you run an example for a federal agency.
Oh, okay. So that's actually a distinction that the P2 tool currently doesn't make, but you can do that in TRI.net. So I'm just toggling back to my presentation. And actually, a good way that I could try to get at that is so first I'll say if you use this TRI.net, that includes a flag that tells you whether a facility is a federal facility. But for now, I'll just go to TRI search, and let's just try running DOE. There's a number of DOE and DOD facilities that report to us. That might not be DOE Craddock facility. That one hasn't reported in a while. Or another way would be from pollution prevention. I'll put in as my industry, I'll put in national security. And let's pull that up. So you see within that national security NAICS code, which is, DoD facilities, we've had a lot. There are actually a lot of facilities that report in that NAICS code. 279 in the most recent year, though we've seen numbers coming down. So here are all of the facilities in that NAICS code. There's one that kind of dwarfs the others. You can use this to compare. Let's see if some of them have reported P2 activities. I'll click on this US DOE Savannah. And if I wanted to get P2 activities instead, a list of P2 activities, I could do that. I know there have been a number have talked about using green ammunition, though we've gotten sort of mixed information on that front. So let's see, to reduce the amount of lead in contaminated soil, inserted a mechanical bullet trap system to collect expended lead bullets in buckets for recycling. So yeah, a lot of them talk about using lead in firing ranges, and some have found solutions in that area. So hopefully that answer the question. Here's one individual facility. We see they've reported a lot of different chemicals, and they've reported P2 for some of them. Chlorine, 62% decrease. So this DOE facility, environmental benefits include elimination of coal purchase, annual reduction of this many tons of carbon dioxide emissions. So hopefully that answers the question about federal facilities. There are other questions?
Yes, I'll move on to the next one. Are P2 activities required to be reported? And if P2 activities are currently optional, will such reporting become mandatory in the near future?
Sure. So it's required under the Pollution Prevention Act that if you implemented P2 activities, that you provide a code corresponding with the type of activity that you implemented. So just to bring those back, so that would be these things like W13, improved maintenance scheduling, record keeping, or procedures, or W52, modified equipment, layout, or piping. That's a yes/no question. You're required to put a code if you did implement P2 activities. But this, the free text information, is optional. So where they said other process modifications, that part is required. Whether they want to elaborate is up to them, but that's the one where it used to be 2% of forms had that information, now 10%. So that's not something we can't require facilities to provide free text information, but what we have been doing is encouraging them to do it, recognizing and showcasing the ones that do it, making this tool available where if you provided that information, people can see, oh, here's a facility that decreased their releases by 100%, and here's what they did. So all of that has made a difference, and we're also trying to, I won't go into it now, but we're making some other changes to just try to work with facilities to make it easier for them to provide the information, but I don't think it's ever going to be required to provide that kind of essay type information.
Great, thank you. Next question. Is the production-related waste managed normalized to account for changes in production? I.e., how do you tell the difference between reductions related to P2 versus economic conditions?
Sure. So let's look at. I'll pull up one of the ones that opened a ton of windows in this time. So this was one of the facilities that we looked at, Jessup Manufacturing. So this is just displaying the production-related waste. This is just raw quantities, 176,000 pounds treated, 7,000 pounds released. This is not taking into account production. The way that we normalize it is that each year a facility provides a production ratio. So they say, by what percent did our production go up or down? And that would be, if they're making, they're doing fabric coating mills, fabric coating, so whatever metric they use to measure their output, they tell us the ratio. So in 2005, so this goes from 100 to 92, so they reported an 8% decrease from 2004 to 2005 in product. So they reported that using a ratio of 0.92. If you put all the ratios together across years, then you have an index. They actually provide a little bit of information on how they calculated the production ratio here, which sometimes facilities will do. But that gives you an index, so now you can see that as their waste has been relatively level over the period, or down and up, this is as their production has been going up throughout. So on a normalized basis, they've actually been doing a lot better. You just normalize the production-related waste by dividing the waste by the production index, and that's how you get your normalized trends.
Great, thank you. Next question. What is the EPA doing to encourage facilities to enter information on their P2 activities?
Sure. So in terms of what we in the TRI program are doing, we've just been communicating with facilities to say that this is your opportunity to showcase the information. We feature this in a lot of ways. We feature it in our TRI National Analysis Report. On our website, we have a P2 page, epa.gov/TRI/P2. We feature it in blog posts. We'll be featuring it at our upcoming TRI National Conference. And we put it in this tool so that whenever anybody looks at your TRI information, they'll see that you have put this information, put P2 activities in, and you'll rise to the top of these lists where we look at who's done the most in terms of P2. So that's what we in the TRI program are doing, but I think it's a matter of how much everyone else uses the information as well. So if technical assistance providers use it, state governments, the more that everyone is taking a look at this and using it to highlight or assess facilities, the more incentive that there is to do it. I've been reading a lot lately about environmental disclosure. There's a lot of, TRI isn't part of regulatory programs, so we have that hook, but there's a lot that companies are doing in terms of environmental disclosure, and none of it is because of governments requiring them to do it, but their customers care about it, their investors care about it, the people that they're supplying care about it. So the more that people use TRI as a resource on pollution prevention and environmental performance, the more incentive there is for the facilities to be transparent and disclose their information. And lastly, so if you want to encourage facilities to provide the information, then that tip sheet that I showed earlier is a way to kind of advertise this opportunity to showcase P2 achievements.
Great, thank you. Next question. Has there been any analysis performed to understand what the underlying drivers are, such as regulations, international customers, etc., for some industries engaging more actively in P2 source reduction versus others?
That's a great question. I'm sure there has been within the TRI program, our small group. We haven't necessarily looked at that. We have looked at aggregate indices of economic factors to see whether that's a driver for certain industries or not. We can also infer that just by looking at the rates, we see that some sectors, more high-tech, computers, electronics, printing and publishing. Some of the more high-tech sectors tend to be the ones that have more, and some of the ones that are more dealing with resource extraction especially, or dealing with raw materials, there's less that you can do. So we've made some inferences, but I think it's a great topic for future research, and I hope that the information that TRI does have is helpful in answering those kinds of questions.
Great. Next question, is release data estimated from calculations or measured for some types?
It's facilities report their releases using their best readily available information. So I've just shown here the quantities, but if you looked at an individual form or if you use some of our tools, facilities also tell their basis of estimation, and they tell us that in each case, whether it's, they'll say their basis of estimating water releases, air releases, waste transfers. So the most preferred is if you have something like continuous emissions monitoring. So sometimes we'll get different degrees of monitoring data. If you're required to monitor releases under other environmental statutes, then you use that for your TRI reporting. If you're not, then in a lot of cases, EPA has published emissions factors, and you use those to make calculations. But there's a whole kind of hierarchy. If you have this information, use that. Not, you can use this, and it goes down to sort of just reasonable estimates using best engineering judgment. But most of the time, you'll have some kind of data that you'll base it on.
Okay, and this is the last question that we've had submitted. Is the P2 information specific to each industry, say at the 6-digit NAICS code level, available in summary form, i.e. summarized across all the information submitted from various companies?
Sure. So it depends, I guess, what you mean by summarized, but I guess this is, this is one summary. So this was national security, which is a 6-digit NAICS code. And remember, I ran this just by putting that in P2. So this is sort of not a, it's a full compilation of the information. Within the national analysis, we might give some kinds of, we do sector profiles, and so we might describe some of the types of information. But here, this is a compilation of for every facility in this industry, all 442. These are all of the entries. You can also download this to Excel. You can, if you want to see how much a certain type of activity was implemented, like modified equipment layout or piping, just put it in the search box so you see 19 of the 442 total entries. That'll give you that information. If you're looking for not all of the free text information but just stats, then again that more sophisticated tool that I mentioned, TRI.net, that can give you a breakdown of how often each code was reported. And actually, this P2 stats, this file in Excel, which is also you can get to from this presentation, has source reduction by industry. So we put this out with the national analysis. So for any 6-digit NAICS, let's find one that has a lot. So animal food manufacturing, it does provide some summary stats. So it tells you their percent change in waste over the last 10 years. Their waste was up 88%. Their releases were down 75%. So we know they're controlling it better, managing with preferred methods. And then it tells you number of facilities that reported newly implemented source reduction activities, 5, and then it would tell you how much of each type. So they're reporting process modifications. That's one that didn't have a very high percentage. But yeah, this tab in that spreadsheet, which again you can get to from here or from our P2 website, will have those kinds of stats. So you can either get a kind of statistical summary, or you can get a summary that shows facility by facility what did they report.
Okay, great. And Daniel, that is all the questions we had, unless you wanted to run through another demo or anything.
Okay. No, I think hopefully that's shown you how to find the P2 information, and my contact info again is on the last slide of the presentation. And if you if you're trying to do analyses in the future, or if you just have questions, then feel free to contact me or to use the resources on our P2 webpage.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. And just a reminder for everyone that the slides and recording will be available on our website at p2.org next week. That's it for our webinar. Thank you so much for attending.